Welcome to this very special studio audience edition of Hannity. Now, tonight for the hour, I will be joined by a very distinguished group of African-American conservatives. Now, included among them are community leaders, political commentators, men of the cloth, women of the cloth, authors, educators, and yes, even a physician. And we're here this evening to tackle some very important and controversial issues surrounding the issue of race in our society. Now, the idea behind this hour was inspired by the speech that was given by Dr. Benjamin Carson. He delivered this back in February at the National Prayer Breakfast. And, of course, he did that with President Obama just seated steps away. And Dr. Carson respectfully voiced his disagreement with some of the core principles of the Obama administration. However, the backlash that he faced from the days afterwards and the weeks and months that followed was anything but respectful. In many cases, it was mean-spirited, it was baseless, and in some cases, downright racist. Watch this.
When you're publicly admitting your party doesn't care enough about Black America, then it's time for a new black friend. Enter Dr. Ben Carson, who's been embraced recently because he's smart and helpful in assuaging their guilt. Carson is a bootstraps kind of guy, speaking their language, talking like he built his path from a poor kid to a pediatric neurosurgeon all by himself. He must have gotten government-backed school loans, which is a form of public assistance, but let's not let facts derail a good I built it without help story. Carson's enjoying the GOP's version of affirmative action, where black faces that can spit conservative game get raced to the front of the line, because then people get to put a bumper sticker on their cars saying, "How can I be racist? I would have voted for Carson," which will fit nicely over the bumper sticker saying, "How can I be racist? I would have voted for Kane," which fit nicely over the bumper sticker saying, "How can I be racist? I would have voted for Allen West." Yes, any black friend will do.
Now, I've said it before, if you are African-American and you are conservative, in this country right now, you are vilified, you are demonized, you are besmirched, your character is assassinated, because sadly, it is episodes like this that lead me to believe there is no freedom of speech for black conservatives right now in America. This has to change. Now, our studio audience will be weighing in on this controversy and others throughout the course of the hour. But first, joining me now to help kick off things is the man who has been subjected to the left's relentless smear campaign, the director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins University. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Benjamin Carson. Good to see you. Well, your life hasn't changed at all.
Well, you know, the good thing is once the media gets finished parsing every word and dissecting, maybe they'll start actually listening to what I'm saying.
Before you gave this speech, were you subjected to name-calling because of your conservative views?
No.
It was only when you went public.
Correct.
Tell us what, since that has happened and since the speech was given and you've given some interviews, what has you been called since then? Obviously, being on television, you may...
Yeah, some of the words cannot be used. And, you know, it's really kind of sad. You know, I feel more sorrowful for the people who do that than I feel angry with them. And, you know, I represent something that they just can't quite get their heads around. How can you be black and, you know, not march lockstep behind the quote leaders? How can you actually think for yourself? And how can you actually have some ideals that actually make sense that don't agree with their leaders? And I am very hopeful that this is a trend that will be broken. I'm going to continue to speak out. Of course, there is an old trick that you ostracize, you ridicule, you isolate, and you keep repeating. Now, these are three rules that are well known to people who've read certain books. Mm-hmm. And, you know, those are things...
Would that be Alinsky?
That would be Alinsky, absolutely.
Just checking. All right, we're all on the same page?
I'm not sure that it's going to work, quite frankly, because I don't plan on going anywhere. So...
well, I think, well, I'll speak for a lot of us. I think a lot of people are glad to hear that. Let me just ask the audience one question. Of everyone here that's conservative, how many of you have been called horrible names because of your conservatism? Everybody in the audience. What does that say, Dr. Carson? Because the names are vicious and vile, and we can't repeat them on television.
Well, it says to me that the very people who love to talk about tolerance are some of the least tolerant people there are. You know, anybody who would do that.
You can clap, yeah.
They would do that. They would try to ostracize and try to shut people up. How tolerant can they be? You know, we need to reach a point in this country where we can have reasoned discussions without getting into corners and tossing hand grenades at each other. We can never make it if we continue to do that. The people have got to rise above that, not allow themselves to be manipulated.
Yeah. Do you think this is an effort at intimidation? Because it's interesting, when you go back to the speech that you gave where President Obama was present, which you then became automatically a national figure, you interestingly, almost prophetically, talked about political correctness. And yet all of this has since been unfolding in your life.
Well, it's just demonstrating exactly what I was saying, and that is, it's threatening the very fabric of our nation. One of the founding principles of our nation is freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And yet there are so many people who are afraid to talk. You know, I've gotten so many emails and letters from people who say, I support you 100%, but please let this remain anonymous. Wow. Why? Because they don't want to have the fiery darts thrown at them.
Because there is this feeling, I mean, if you look, I can take this audience back through every election cycle. 1998, Missouri Democratic Party, radio ad, if you elect conservatives, elect Republicans, black churches will burn. The NAACP ad, James Byrd, George Bush supported the death penalty for the people responsible for that heinous crime. Al Gore goes before a predominantly African-American audience. His tone, his speech, his cadence shifts. He goes into a black preacher mode. Yeah. Same with Hillary. What do you think that is from the left and their silence when black conservatives are called all of these names? They claim they're against racism. Why don't they speak out when African-American conservatives are attacked?
I think that would be a very good question to ask them. Of course, they won't. I doubt that they'll answer.
Come on my show, or they'll, you know.
They'll dodge the question. Yes. and move around because perhaps they don't want to face reality. But, you know, the way I look at it, and I've said this before, as a brain surgeon, you know, I don't tend to see race and talk about race a whole lot, because when I open that head up, and I'm operating on the brain, that's the thing that makes the person who they are. The cover doesn't make them who they are. And it's only people who are very superficial in their thinking who characterize everything by its color.
You know, I know you have a deep, abiding Christian faith, as do I. The word education from the Latin, I'm going to show off a little of my seminary education here. It's educare, to bring forth from within.
Yes.
So if you believe that God created every man, woman, and child, then you believe all that talent is there when they were born, and it's our job to help bring it out of children.
Exactly. And these are things, you know, particularly in the African-American community, that we need to be talking about again. You know, education is so fundamental to success in our society. Also, bringing back values, you know, the kinds of Judeo-Christian values that help establish this country and that made families strong. We've lost a lot of that. As a result, there's less respect for each other. Young men are not respecting the young ladies. They're going around impregnating them. Young ladies are allowing that to happen by disrespecting themselves. Babies are being born with no solid family or financial structure. They have 4 to 9 times the instance of poverty. People are not learning how to turn over dollars in their own community a couple of times before they send them out. That's how you build wealth, and as you build wealth, reaching back and pulling others up. You know, if people begin to understand these principles, it really won't matter what else is going on around them.
We can build a great country.
Absolutely.
With all this great talent.
No question.
You're going to stay with us, right?
Yes.
All right, we're going to continue more with Dr. Carson and our great studio audience. And coming up, the left certainly has not reserved its vicious rhetoric just for Dr. Carson alone. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at some of the more outrageous attacks that have been leveled at other African-American conservatives. And then we open it up to our studio audience when we return as we continue the special edition of Hannity.
News Channel.
And welcome back to the special studio audience edition of Hannity. And tonight I am joined by a great outspoken group of African-American conservatives. Now, they're here tonight for, among other things, to dispute the ridiculous, insane stereotype that all blacks in this great country of ours are somehow liberal. Far from it. In fact, as we have demonstrated in our last segment, it is not uncommon for many of the men and women that are seated here tonight to be on the receiving end of racially charged attacks simply for standing up for the principles that they believe in. And here to help elaborate on that point and much, much more, our audience of political commentators, reverends, authors, doctors, activists, and much more. By the way, welcome all of you. Thank you for being here. Deneen Borelli, this, in part, we're doing this show was your idea. You said, we've got to expose this. You wrote a book, Blacklash.
Yes.
In that book, you start out and you say, Google my name. I know you well. I've Googled your name. I don't like what I see. Tell people what they'd see if they do that.
Well, listen, you're going to see things that I can't even say on your program, but token, traitor, sellout, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Tom. But these are individuals hiding behind their computers instead of debating me on my values and my principles. But I tell you, I wrote Blacklash because I want to expose the failures of the black liberal establishment. And at the top of the list is President Obama. In my opinion, he has a war against black Americans because look at the unemployment rate. Look at the failed high school dropout rates. He is not doing what he should be doing to implement proposals where people should be employed. His energy policy is failing our country. And when you look at it, he had over 90% of black voter support for both elections. And he's just failing our country and especially failing the black community.
Let me ask, we've now heard from Dr. Carson and Deneen Borelli. A show of hands. How many of you have been called horrible names, as we were talking about earlier? Put your hand up high. Everybody in this room, horrible names. Reverend, why? Why is that happening? And where are the people on the left that claim they will stand up for civil rights, defending the right of African-American conservatives not to be treated this way?
It's designed, Sean, to keep black people in particularly uninformed and broke. And when you put people in that type of situation, you have them uninformed about the freedom that's all around them, then you're able to lead them like sheep down a path that they have led them to
I'm
over
looking, I see a lot of head nodding going on.
year period of time.
Yeah.
And when you look at the black community, and you look at this administration being reelected, it was reelected because the electorate was uninformed and they didn't have any money.
Were they well informed? Let me go here. Star Parker, how are you? Good to see you.
Yes, good seeing you too. You know, when we look at who's behind this strategy, the liberal Democrats have not changed their MO. This is not a new strategy. They used it during slavery. Remember, every time the word freedom was mentioned and African Americans at that time heard about freedom, if you ran away, they would bring you back to that plantation, the overseer. The overseer today is the Congressional Black Caucus. Their exclusive job is to keep them on the plantation, keep them uneducated, and keep them unarmed. And this was the same job of the overseer of the slave plantation, which was liberal Democrats. But let me finish this one point, because I'm going to tell you what they did. They would take that slave, they would strip the skin off of him, and make everybody watch. And that's what they do to us.
People are going to hear this, and they're going to say, you're going to compare the Congressional Black Caucus to overseers?
It's the same exact strategy, because what they know.
Everyone agrees with that? Crystal, you disagree. I want to ask you why.
I disagree with the constant comparison of black liberals as slave masters and comparing those people, those blacks who choose to be informed and vote for Democrats, as somehow slaves. I think the better way for us to talk about this is what Dr. Carson does, what I do. When you talk about the history of the Republican Party, when you talk about the fact that Lincoln and Republicans from before slavery through to 1964 and beyond with President Nixon, Republicans are the ones who fought for civil rights, who fought for opportunity for blacks, who actually, Nixon, nobody knows this because they don't know their history. In 1970, when Nixon became president, he was solely responsible, his policies, for making sure the schools were desegregated. So you know what Democrats stand for? Secession, segregation, and slavery. And what we need to be reminding blacks about is that if you're trapped in failing schools, it's because Democrats want you that way. They wanted you that way before we were freed, and they want you trapped in failing schools now. So when we talk about, when I go, all the things Dr. Carson was saying, when I spoke at the Congressional Black Caucus with my good friend Ron Christie about voter IDs, and I said, I want you guys to tell me why blacks can't get IDs but whites can. Kids came up to me afterwards and said, Crystal, you gave me a license to come out of the closet.
Can I add one point? Because there is a missing link in terms of history. And when I bring this up, liberals don't like to hear it. 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act. Well, where was Al Gore's father?
Voting against it. Al Gore's senior voted against it.
Right. But there is this.
Our movie, Sean,
yes, sir.
Runaway Slave movie, deals with all of those points. There would not have been a Civil Rights Act of 1965 if it had not been for Everett Dirksen, a Democrat from Illinois. And many times, so many times, the history of the Republican Party, and one thing Republicans are afraid of doing, is standing up and facing this thing.
You want to know one reason why? The R word. Yes. People do not want to be called, because who would want to be a racist? It's evil.
That anyway. They're going to call you that anyway.
All right, we got to take a break. I feel like a teacher in school. You're raising your hand. All right. We'll come back. We have a great studio audience, and also coming up next on this special edition of Hannity.
Racism is the belief that one race, whites, should rule all others. Get your definition straight.
Oh, really? Now I'm going to ask our studio audience if they agree with that left-wing anchor's assessment as this special edition of Hannity returns straight ahead. And welcome back to the special studio audience edition of Hannity tonight as we continue our discussion about the conservative movement with members of the African-American community. I want to draw your attention to something that was said last week by one of the so-called journalists over at NBC News. Let's take a look at this.
Things took a turn for the political yesterday when President Obama and his family attended an Easter service across Lafayette Park at St. John's Church. The pastor, Dr. Luis Leon, called out some on the religious right who he says are standing in the way of progress. Quote, "It drives me crazy when the captains of the religious right are always calling people back, for blacks to be back in the back of the bus, for women to be back in the kitchen, for gays to be in the closet, and for immigrants to be on their side of the border." Now the response from Rush Limbaugh.
That's an interesting take, that the president inspires it. Inspires racism. It may well be the case. So Obama's presence inspires this guy to go all divisive, all racist, and start jamming on the Republicans for wanting blacks at the back of the bus and women back in the kitchen, when he can't name a single person who does. But the president of the United States, you may be right, may have inspired that in this preacher.
Well, actually, Rushbo, racism is the belief that one race, whites, should rule all others. Get your definition straight.
Somebody needs to buy this guy a dictionary. Joining me now to respond directly, Mr. Thrill Up His Leg, our very special studio audience of African-American conservatives. You're laughing. Why?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the notion that that whites have a monopoly on racism is ridiculous. You listen to some of the things that some of the most prominent black leaders in this country have made, from comments that they've made, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson.
I mean, White
leaders,
was,
White Interloper, Jaime Town, Nation of Islam leader comments about Jews and so forth. Obviously, no one race of people has a monopoly on racism. But I wanted to get back to something you said earlier about the name calling. I think it goes deeper than that. There's a need on the left to almost psychoanalyze black conservatives, put them on the couch. So in other words, Justice Scalia's views on affirmative action are simply wrong. But Clarence Thomas is a self-hating, self-loathing traitor to his race. I mean, there's a double standard there. And I think the reason you have that, and Dr. Carson alluded to this earlier, he said, when are they going to stop tearing me down and listen to my ideas? Well, if you can psychoanalyze someone, delegitimize them, you don't have to take on their ideas. They're operating outside of the realm of responsible debate. And that's what the left tries to do to black conservatives.
But this is why I say this, in every one of your lives, this is a profile in courage. Because, well, courageous people never know they're courageous, right? Seriously.
That may be true, but what I think that we're missing here is that we actually do have a license to say a lot of things as black conservatives. I actually kind of disagree. I think that we're the ones speaking out saying, you're wrong on all these issues. And what really amazes me is that they would actually pick on Dr. Carson. It just shows you the level that they're willing to go, because this is a guy that gets to work on people's brain. When I talk about, hey, I'm not a brain surgeon, I'm not. He really is. You know what I mean? So it's really funny to me. But I want to go back to one of the comments that was made. Biden made a comment about going into the black sections of my town and helping black people with AIDS. You remember that? And black people were in the audience, and I remember Al Sharpton kind of going, did he really say that? First of all, did he need a visa to go visit the black sections of his town? The fact that he believes that there is a black section of his town shows you the level of racism that is inherent in the left, and people just dismiss these things, and so do
I agree with you.
So do the conservatives. We let them get away with this.
Let me ask one point that Rush was making here. To what extent I'm livid as a conservative when I'm called a racist, because it's not true. I'm a Christian. Well, but I am livid at the characterization that if you're conservative, you don't care about African Americans, you don't care about Latinos, because that is the antithesis of how I was raised, who I am, and the way I was born. But it's a narrative. Just like Obama will say, Republicans want dirty air and dirty water. They want kids with autism, Down syndrome.
The central point, Sean.
All right, go ahead.
The central point.
What is that?
With the left is what Dr. Carson and everybody in here represents is a threat to their sense of ownership. Liberals in total believe that they own black America, and anyone who dares stand up and say, especially during Black History Month, we're more than that 30-second blurb for McDonald's. McDonald's shoots Black History Month, and they show one little blurb of something great about us. They want you to focus on civil rights or anything that shows us as downtrodden. It gets so bad to the point where you literally, like as Starr has and I have, gotten death threats on college campuses from people who, first, not only are not black, but aren't American, because they feel like if you speak up, somebody else might hear you.
Let me follow up on your point. This is really important. Where is the left defending the attacks? Wait a minute. You're laughing at me. That's fine. It's my show. David Webb. Yeah.
We actually even have to peel it back for a moment. Put aside the word conservative. Put aside the word black. Go to the word power and add control to it. When you talk about what I call the liberal brain and that leftist brain, they require that you're an ally of convenience,
It'll
that
take
you're
a whole lifetime
victim.
of Dr. Carson
Right,
figuring that out.
Right, but you're a victim, and it's about power and control. So when you hear talk of education, and I talk about political education, understanding how your country works, how your community works, by narrowcasting what you believe and feeding you those messages, you are now controlled through lack of education. You're controlled because you have needs, and they control your needs. They give you literally, whether it's the government cheese to the tax return to whatever benefit, whatever entitlement, whatever program. Now let me tell you, this is, hang on, this is not limited. This is not limited to blacks, but it's even more felt in a community that they feel ownership of, and it's power and control, and it's when you break that, you threaten their existence.
All right, I'm going to go deeper into this because I want some answers. Why do you think, when we come back, 90% of the black vote goes to the Democratic Party? I want your thoughts on President Obama, the economy, black America. They are bearing the brunt of what I would say one of the worst economic downturns. Why isn't there more anger? We'll get into all of that as we continue. Coming up next, political figures are not the only black conservatives to come under fire. Even superstar athletes like Washington Redskins quarterback Robert Griffin III, they're not safe from these racially charged hatred and comments from some liberals. Straight ahead.
Is he a brother, or is he a cornball brother?
What does that mean?
Yeah, explain that.
Well, he's not really. Okay, he's black, he kind of does the thing, but he's not really down with the cause.
When we come back, our studio audience responds to those disgusting comments and much more. And welcome back to Hannity. Now, so far tonight, with the help of our audience, we have been focusing our attention on the left's obsession with tearing down African-American conservatives, now particularly if they're politicians. However, it's very important to note that these attacks are by no means limited to the world of politics. Now, last year, many of us, we were stunned when a commentator on ESPN turned his attention to Washington Redskins quarterback, the phenomenon of Robert Griffin III. Now, Robert Parker was fired by the sports network after he unloaded on RG3 simply because the star athlete is rumored to be a conservative. Think of the thought. Watch this.
My question, which is just a straight, honest question, is he a brother or is he a cornball brother?
What does that mean?
Yeah, explain that.
Well, he's not really. Okay, he's black, he kind of does the thing, but he's not really down with the cause. He's not one of us. He's kind of black, he's in the, but he's not really like the guy you really want to hang out with because he's off to something else.
Why is that your question?
Well, because that's just how I want to find out about him. I don't know because I keep hearing these things. We all know he has a white fiance, and there was all this talk about he's a Republican, which there's no information at all. I'm just trying to dig deeper into why he has an issue.
Here with reaction, we continue with our audience. Reverend, your reaction.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
But I have a problem. I don't like to engage in this actual debate. You know, you think about it, Easter just passed, and many of us here probably saw the Bible series on TV.
Loved it.
And, you know, I'm a priest, I'm a bishop, and Scripture is what I know, Scripture is what I do. But, you know, you look repeatedly at how, you know, they cast lots of names at Jesus. They called him all sorts of names. He didn't spend inordinate amounts of time saying, oh, well, he said this and he said that. He focused on what he needed to do. So, you know, I appreciate you having this dialogue, but I'm a little bit troubled by it because all the names that people call me, fine, let them call me the names and let me focus on what I do. Let me stay on my own message and do what I need to do.
Can you think of a national forum prior to this one where this issue, where I think it is an institutional racism against African Americans that happen to be politically conservative, that are called the most vile names in a society that has moved way to the left on political correctness, that it is still socially apparently acceptable to use the names that Demean used and Starr used and others have been called in this room? I can't think of one.
We ignore them. We do ignore them. We are ignoring these names. I don't think there's anybody in this room that sits around going, "Oh my gosh, they just called me an opportunist," or they called me an Oreo.
If it's wrong to be racist, why isn't this wrong in society? That's my question, Reverend. All right, Reverend Peterson, I see you back there, and we'll get to Carol.
You know, I was a Democrat at one time, and as a young person, I had a lot of anger. And when I was told by the leadership that the Republican Party was a racist party against black people, I believed that lie because I had this anger. But once I was able to overcome, I looked at the different platforms and I realized that I identified with the Republican platform, so I became a Republican. We have to expect the name calling. We have to expect the tough times.
I agree. Can I just add one thing?
But deal with it. Let me just say, there are a lot of young black people who have been lied to about the Republican Party. And so what we need to do, as we're doing at Bond and with South Central LA Tea Party, we are educating the people about the party because I didn't hear anything good about the Republican Party while growing up. Right, so we got to educate the young.
Reverend, I want to make sure that anybody that has any point of view has the ability and right to speak out without experience what everybody in this room has experienced. Right. That's my point. Yeah, go ahead. Carol, go ahead. I promised you next, then I'll get to you, I promise.
Well, I see the name calling as a sign of how effective we are, because we wouldn't be attacked if we weren't reaching people.
You're a threat.
And I find that in the African American community, there's lots of support for conservative values and principles, and we just have to find a way to combat the lies of the Democrats. Yeah, and they're coming from an elitist small group.
Ron Christie, why are 90% of the African American vote, why does it always go Democrat? Why is it almost a given that it's going to remain Democrat? Because I don't.
Well, you know, I have to tell you, I wrote a book on this 2 years ago called Acting White: The Curious History of a Racial Slur. And you can take this all the way back to Uncle Tom's Cabin, where the attributes of being a good character were very literate, very well-spoken. And now we've seen in the last 30 or so years that if you apply yourself, if you're African American, if you study hard, if you work hard, somehow you're acting white and you're not authentically down with the struggle. And that's exactly where we're going to in this country. And the ultimate irony, Sean, is this presidency was supposed to herald hope and change. We were supposed a new era, but this administration has shamelessly played the race card to put down African American conservatives at the extent of keeping power for themselves.
It's interesting because Dr. Carson, your story about your mother saying no television, you're going to read a book a week, both you and your brother, it transformed your life. You are the head of pediatric neurosurgery.
And there was a no excuse mentality. That was important. But, you know, I just want to mention that there are some conservative black people like Armstrong Williams with a big listenership He just bought a couple of television stations.
Pay more than me.
These things are working. I know of a white university president at a prestigious university who very soon is going to make a big speech about liberty, freedom of speech. So it is possible that maybe some of all this bad stuff is actually helping to turn the tide.
Right. I think you're right. I promise everybody's going to be heard. We'll take a break. We'll come back up next. And welcome back to the special studio audience edition of Hannity. And we continue with all of us. We have African-American conservatives joining us tonight. We were talking before we took a break. I promise you're next. About African-Americans, how they're treated as conservatives, and the names that you're called. Here we have the first African-American president. I've watched the Democratic Party over the years. Every election cycle, I can show you the tape, we see the race card is played. We see that when prominent Democrats go before prominently African-American audiences, they go into the preacher mode. The cadence shifts. Al Gore is a good example. Hillary is another. You're laughing because it's kind of funny. What's Joe Biden?
They want a black dialect. How they think black people should talk. But I think more importantly, to pick up what Ron said and go a little bit what you're saying, Sean, when's the last time somebody questioned your whiteness and told you because you're white you need to, like, I don't know, pick up a six-pack, drive a pickup truck? I mean, I don't know. What do white people do? Sean, tell me. But no, I mean, this is really what this is about.
What's worse than that is the fact that we're buying into it.
Right.
That's what's worse than that. If there was no platform for this types of things to happen, then they wouldn't happen. If that group that sat in front of our current vice president when he said he's going to put y'all back in chains, they allowed that to happen, and because they created that atmosphere for such.
Something really quick about Touré. Let's just address Touré. You were asking why are blacks voting over 90%. It's a combination of what Ron said, but it's also because CNN, NBC prop up charlatans, race hustlers like Al Sharpton and Touré, who doesn't, he has intellectual brain tumors, Touré does, not Dr. Carson, who is a brilliant brain surgeon, but more importantly, when black Americans are getting misinformation, and also the Republican Party is not going into the communities like all of us are. We're not going into the communities.
They need to go into the communities.
Right, we need to just, and when we talk about the message on a grassroots level,
I did promise, and I'm a man of my word. Go ahead. Hang on. Well, I promise. Go ahead.
I take issue with allowing the liberals to have so much power over who black conservatives are. I think that people who choose not to do their research, there needs to be some level of ownership and responsibility. And the pastor over here said, he goes about his own business. He lets the names roll off of his back and he goes about his own business. No one here really cares about those names. What we care about more is that people are not pledging this allegiance to someone based on their color, but that they're pledging allegiance to intrinsic motivation and trying to learn and understand and educate themselves. Whether we go into their communities or not, it's everybody's responsibility. No one came into my community. I went looking for it, and I searched on my own, and I think that's what it needs to be.
But we've got it. You know why this is important? Because we got to help our children. The employment numbers, the educational opportunities,
and that's for the parents, whether you're a single parent or not,
are abysmal. And we're not helping those kids. Carl, let me go to you. Go ahead.
We need to define ourselves louder than they can define us. So we have to go back to the basics. Limited government. What does that mean? How does that cause upward mobility? Economic freedom. We're the party of economic freedom. I'm an immigrant. The reason I came to this country because I wanted to find out where did the American dream come from? It came from...
Where'd you come from?
From Jamaica. I'm from Jamaica. So economic freedom, the free movement of capital where they're most productive, which involves human capital. People come to America because you can rise above everything else, and the sky is the limit. Economic freedom is a root of conservatism. So we need to define that and how it relates to our policies and as we go forward.
Well, because if every child has that talent.
That's right.
And we give them that good education, the light and the water, you know what? The violence goes away. Erica, I want to get you in this segment. Go ahead. Jump in.
Sure. I actually went to college in New Hampshire, which was predominantly a white college, and I recall one instance where I was in a classroom. It was myself and another African-American female was in the classroom, and they, for some reason, were talking about affirmative action, and the other young lady wanted to say that she was in the college because of affirmative action, and I actually took a lot of offense to that because that's trying to say that my education and my intelligence had absolutely nothing to do with getting accepted.
You know what? That's
and
a judgment, and that's
bothers
unfair.
me, and it should have bothered her.
Yeah.
And I don't know why a lot of people carry that and are looking for their 40 acres and a mule still, when that's, get over it. We got our 40 acres and a mule because look at where we are today, that we are able to be who we want to be and do what we want to do.
All right. Very well said. Very well said. All right, we got to go ahead.
I was going to say, this lie that blacks cannot be racist is a lie. You look at the Congressional Black Caucus that will only allow black Democrats to join. You look at in law schools, I'm an attorney. When I was in law school and I protested against the Black Law Students Association because they did not want to let non-blacks in, and I said, you were racist. They said, oh no, we can't be racist because we don't have the power. So this is just, a fraud.
That's like Chris Matthews' definition.
Exactly. It's a Chris Matthews. It's about power. And the fact of the matter is, we all come from all different backgrounds. But I think we all have a similar story to Dr. Carson, that our parents said, you want to make it in America? This is the land of opportunity. You get an education, you read, you write, you do the things you need to do to be successful. It wasn't about you got to be the right kind of black person.
Everybody in this room is a role model. Everybody
racism into financial empowerment. The issue is not that these African Americans are racist. The issue is they're trying to hold on to their power because, to be honest with you, that's all they have in Congress. If they go home, they're not going to get a job. So they want to hold on to every space and across the board. I'm sick and tired of this miscarrying.
I wish everybody in this room was elected. Really, it'd be good for the country. All right, we got to take a break. Our closing thoughts with our audience coming up straight ahead. Special edition of Hannity, our audience of African American conservatives. Okay, who has?
Conservative. Thank you.
Yes. We're black. Okay. You're killing me. You're killing me.
One quick question. For everybody who says they're African American, how many of them know what tribe they're from? In Africa. We're black, we're Americans, we happen to be black. That's it.
There it is.
Wayne.
We're conservative.
Right there, Wayne.
Yes.
Go ahead, you're up.
All right, well, I think the biggest problem they've been going after Dr. Carson is because he's actually providing solutions as African-American conservatives. Now, the one thing I heard him talk about the most was his health care plan. We talked about saving money from the time of birth. Right. None of our elected officials, Democrat or Republican, have brought up any of these kind of solutions. And I think that's what strikes the most fear in the liberal mindset is not only is he intelligent, he doesn't yell and scream, so they can't make him a character.
Very soft-spoken,
very calm,
powerful, right?
Deals with people's brains. Like I said, they can't make him a character. And I think that's
control yourself.
That's what they fear the most is that you can't make them a character. They can't make a caricature of them. They don't have sound clips of them just going crazy on the stage. Right. And so that's a big problem right there.
Jada, weigh in.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I really appreciate Deneen, because if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be here. I met Deneen in Florida because I came to a place where I started to kind of not really, I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go. And in my own self-exploration, I realized that my color was not the same as my belief. Meaning, if I were liberal, then just because I was liberal, I should believe a certain way. But I'm beginning to believe something a little bit different. So I just want to say that I appreciate everyone. And sometimes I'm not black enough, and I don't like that. I am black, and I believe very firmly in what I believe in, and that empowers me.
You're also God's child, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most of us believe in God. Yes. You spoke. All right, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say that I'm a man, not a color. I'm an American, not an African American. And as far as solutions, here's a few solutions for you, Sean, as we go forward and we leave this show. We need to fight in these communities against the overregulations and the policies that are killing black people. Davis-Bacon Act, the lone remaining Jim Crow law in America has to go. The Congressional Black Caucus votes for the Davis-Bacon Act. Project labor agreements, they need to go. Sean, they're discriminating against women and minorities. Guess who Obama claims he defends? Women. So at the end of the day, we need to stop preaching to the choir, and we need to go into these communities. You ask why is it that blacks have been voting Democrat for X amount of years? Guess what? Blacks have been voting Democrat since 1936 because we stopped competing.
Kevin?
You know what, Sean? Everyone in this room, okay, a closed mouth has no voice.
and we are going to raise our voices and be heard. Okay, I don't care. When they call me names, it's a badge of daggone honor for me. Okay, I take it, twirl it around, and spin it, and do everything I have to do with it. If you call me Uncle Tom Seller, I know that I've won the debate. I know I've won the debate. My ideas are superior.
But if anyone else is criticized or called these names, they are either fired, condemned, ostracized. That doesn't happen in this case. That's why, CJ, real quick, I want to get you in. Yeah.
I think we will never get to the 40% of African American vote that we used to have when blacks voted for Republican. But will we now begin to compete street by street, block by block? And that's what the Growth and Opportunity Project was all about. And I think you're going to see that very soon.
Earl, did we get you in? Earl, go ahead.
Okay, we heard a lot of issues going on here. Now we need to talk to the thing about solutions. What can we do? Number one thing we need to do: engage. All
right, let me ask you a question. Only because we're out of time. Would everybody here be willing to come back and talk about solutions for the problems in inner cities, black-on-black crimes, the educational system that is harming black Americans? David, black Americans, David. Everybody.